Kent has a passion for cybersecurity through enablement, education, and driving awareness. He has experience in wide area of security and network-related technologies for across small, medium, and large enterprises. This experience has given him a broad technical background and understanding of the security requirements of businesses, as well as the excellent understanding of the threat landscape. And talking about threat landscape, Kent will talk about XDR. As you can see, the next-gen strategy leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework. All right. Okay, Kent, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks. I appreciate that warm welcome. As Brian stated, my name is Kent Stevens, and I'm a senior sales engineer here at Trend Micro Canada. And I want to welcome you all today on my session on XDR, the next generation strategy leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of what today's discussion will entail. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the use case for XDR, how we got here today, what the current landscape looks like. Then we're going to bounce and look at an XDR system from a 10,000-foot view, just the overall architecture of one. Then we're going to talk about what MITRE means to this and how important it is to XDR as we move forward, and how having a framework there to help support us is very valuable. Then we're going to bounce to telemetry outside of the endpoint. So EDR was a big boom when it came on the market, but I'm going to talk about that telemetry beyond the endpoint. I'm going to focus a little bit on the email telemetry today and how important that is in today's landscape. And then next, we're going to talk a little bit about correlation, because that's really what these XDR systems are going to help us with, is aggregation and correlation, allowing us to find those needles in a haystack. Right? Having the ability to leverage AI and machine learning is going to be very valuable as we move forward with these strategies. And then last but not least, this is the only time I'm going to show a Trend Micro product, but essentially I'm just going to give you a view of what an XDR system would look like, the visibility, what a workbench or a visualization of an alert may look like in one of your systems as you move forward. So let's get started. So as part of digital transformation, organizations are experiencing a fundamental shift in the way they operate, right? We're seeing more and more cloud migrations, right? We're seeing infrastructure move to multi-cloud. We're seeing new cloud applications being developed. We're seeing our users become more mobile, right? So services for our users are also moving to the cloud, right? As the service is becoming, part and parcel with what we do today, whether it's email, whether it's our CRM system, those are all cloud-based today. And this movement started before the pandemic, but obviously accelerated quite rapidly when the pandemic hit. And then last, the perimeter continues to extend, right? There is no defined perimeter today. Workers are working from all over the world, from a plethora of locations and a lot of different devices. So very important to get some visibility into that OT, extended network world. And so with all of this movement and change that's happening, organizations are introducing risk, major misconfigurations sometimes, right? And vulnerabilities across the entire environment, covering cloud workloads and applications, endpoints, network, and even OT devices. And still today, our security or SOC teams, right, incident response handlers, they want visibility across the board, and they want the ability to rapidly detect and respond across the entire environment. And we're seeing a large growth in this space over the last 24 months, and we'll continue to see growth as organizations start to adapt a detect and respond strategy, and hopefully encompassing an XDR approach. And so let's talk a little bit about the use case today, where we're at, why organizations are shifting in this way, why we're seeing growth. So today we're focusing on a lot of silos, right? We have EDR, which is great and shows you all of the activity on the endpoint, but then we also have a network security control, which may have other logs. So those systems are not connected today, right? And we have limited visibility in the cloud, right? Maybe very, very few have visibility into that space. We have visibility into the email space also. And we brought the SIEM together to really help with that, right? Gain some visibility across multiple security layers. But with this, we know that the SIEM has created a lot of noise, lots of alerts, and lots of alerts without context. And so as we look at this particular attack that's happened here, there's much more to this story, right? So essentially what we can see is this threat arrived by email. It hit an endpoint, right? It crossed the network into the cloud. right? Affected a few applications in the cloud, then moved to the OT network. So there's a lot going on here. Lots of detections, little context in the SIEM tool today. And this is really what has started that XDR story and how we got here and why we wanted to build this. So the XDR story really breaks down those silos, delivers faster detection and response across the whole environment because it tells the story, right? Instead of making the SOC team dig through all those noisy alerts, XDR gets the telemetry from each security control, uses automation and big data to tell the story, right? And save time for the security teams. And so when we talk about XDR, I mean, it's still a defining term. You know, Forrester just put the first new wave out a couple weeks ago, but XDR is a term, and I'm going to focus on what ESG has to say and define it. And it's really an integrated suite of security products spanning hybrid IT architectures designed to interoperate and coordinate on threat, prevention, detection, and response. In other words, it's going to be a unification of security controls, telemetry, analytics, and operations into one enterprise system. And when we talk about XDR, there's going to be two different approaches to this. There's going to be the hybrid approach where you're going to try to bolt together best of breed solutions. Hopefully they have some API integrations, or you can go with a native XDR approach, which is the vendors leveraging native sensors to build these big data lakes. And with all of this, you're going to see a lot of marketing hype, but you're also going to see the reality of these XDR systems rolling out. And you're going to get the chance to play with these kind of things and see how they'll take your security strategy to the next step. And so quickly, I want to talk about what an XDR system looks like. So this is a 10,000 foot view. And really what we're looking at here is a number of data sources, right? Providing telemetry into an XDR data lake, right? These data lakes are going to have engines and our engines run across them. So security analytics engines, you're going to see ingestion and normalization. You're going to see correlation. You're going to see detection. You're going to see visualization. And because they're going to be so API rich, you're going to see integrations into SOAR tools to help automate, so leveraging current investments, and then integrations into SIEMs, so security teams can get their alerts in the same fashion they do today without changing workflow. And this is really what an XDR system is going to look like from 10,000 feet. And so quickly, I want to talk about what the difference is and how we got to this XDR strategy. So really focusing on SIEM and EDR, and then really bouncing over to XDR and talking about the use case for this technology. And so let's look at an attack chain here. Essentially, what we're seeing here is a phishing email. And we're seeing that email be opened, a Word doc being accessed, PowerShell being launched, some CNC activity, and then some cloud activity afterwards. And so as this goes through our environments today without XDR, with just a SIEM tool, you may get one alert from one of your products, you know, maybe some web activity alert. And really, with all the events going on in the environment, this security alert may just get gobbled up among everything else. And so this really, you know, evolved the EDR story. And really that is the focus of having the black box on your endpoints. And essentially with that, we gained a lot more visibility to the activity on the endpoint. But if we look at this particular attack chain, we can see there are still some data sources that are still not available when we look at this from an EDR approach. And that's really what brought us to the XDR approach, is really the visibility and ability to see the entire attack chain from the time it comes in from email to the time it hits the endpoint to the time it transverses the network, capturing all of that activity so that when you have to play it back, you have all the activity so that you can respond appropriately. And with this, you're going to have those integrations to SIEM. Essentially, these XDR systems are going to send high fidelity alerts, really, you know, alerts that have been correlated across multiple security layers, right? Giving you the idea on where to prioritize your time as a security team. And with this, we have a couple use cases to talk about right now. Really, the SIEM is going to be about a broader set of sources. So going really wide with our detections and alerts coming into a common system, right? Not all of them are going to have context or activity data behind them, but really just broad from all of your security controls. And where XDR's focus is really going to be on extensive telemetry, having all of the telemetry from email, from endpoint, from cloud, from network, allowing you to do those automations, but then also have the ability to go back through and threat hunt if you need to in the environment. And if it's native, they're going to have an in-depth source of understanding of the data sources. When you're bolting things together, I deployed a SIEM tool in my organization when I was a security analyst. And normalizing that data and parsing it can be very difficult. But if the vendor is doing it in a native approach, they understand the data source, and they can parse it and normalize it much easier. And the focus is really detection and response, having the ability to detect that adversary activity and respond either through automation or manual process. And so let's talk about MITRE and how important this is. So everybody's heard of the MITRE vulnerability database. There's a few things that MITRE has brought to the table, such as TAXI and STIX and lots of security tools as they move forward. But they also have these attack frameworks. And these attack frameworks is mapping of adversary activity. So the steps and the tactics and the procedures and the tactics that they take to meet their mantra and what they're trying to achieve in your organization. And these matrix contain more than just Windows, more than just endpoint. They're focused on cloud, and they're focused on Office 365 and Azure AD and even SaaS. And then there's separate matrices for phones such as iOS and Android, and even ICS controls also have their own matrix. And really what this allows you to do is understand your adversaries, right? This is a common knowledge base, nonprofit, lots of data here, lots of enablement. Become familiar with it, understand how Navigator works. But as you mature as an organization, allowing you to map out your adversaries to see where you need visibility, it's going to serve big dividends in organizations as they move forward. So adopting a framework allows you to have somebody provide you data. So as you go through it, they're going to point you in the right direction as you go through your investigation of the next steps to take. And with XDR and attack, really it's about improving coverage. When you look at your adversaries and you look at attack and you see where you have visibility with your current security controls, you want to improve coverage. You don't want to treat this like a checklist. Try to gain all the visibility you can. Not everybody has that kind of budget, but what you want to do is mature. Understand your adversary, mature your security practice around who you are looking at and who you're facing, and get those security controls in place as you move forward. It's also going to improve confidence. So MITRE and attack is going to lead to some correlation, which is great, right? And improve confidence so that when an event happens, you understand the steps to take, not only to see where they've been, but to understand and basically contain and eradicate that threat when it does happen. And like I said, drive correlation, really allowing these XDR systems to correlate and tag events to MITRE, allowing them to have those correlation engines in place as they move forward, just to map at those attacks when it comes to detection models or threat use cases as a service. And so quickly, this is where a lot of us are today, right? We're working from our home office. But let's look at an example really quickly, and let's pretend that, we have a computer inside the network, right? So it's on the network right now. Essentially, we see that there is a ransomware detection on that endpoint. And this is really where your endpoint protection is going to come in. Your behavior monitoring, your predictive machine learning, your pattern-based defenses. Really, they're going to knock that down very quickly, allowing it not to spread. And if you have the capabilities like ransomware rollback in your environment, it can replace any damaged files that happened during this incident. And really, EPP is designed to act rapidly, knock down that threat immediately once it's detected. But EDR looks at it at a longer time horizon, helps assess impact. So from this particular attack, we see phishing email because we see Outlook involved, we see PowerShell involved, we see some credential dumping, whether it's from the registry or from other means. And then we also see that ransomware attack. And so that allows us to assess the situation at the endpoint level. And like I said, according to the Verizon DBER report, they said you need a good mix of fast-acting protection products and slow recording detection products. Essentially what that says is you want products to deal with things like traditional ransomware where they came in and they just hit you right away. And then today with modern ransomware, they get in, their dwell time is longer, they're mapping your environment, they're understanding your assets, they're doing data exfiltration, and they're usually delivering their attack from an admin share or as such to deliver it. So you want the ability not only to act quickly with an endpoint protection product, but you also want the ability to continuously record your environment so you understand where attacks or threats may lie. And so let's quickly talk about email, because email is one of the really useful data sources for XDR when you think about why email is so important. And so from that same report, about 46% of organizations came back and said they got most of their malware from the email channel. And we all know that email is a threat vector that requires very little skill to deliver this, right? Essentially sending an email, putting a payload, whether it's a URL, whether it's a document in it. I mean, it's very easy for our adversaries to deliver, whether they're whale phishing or targeted. It's a very easy vector when it comes to that. So focusing on email is very important. And so let's just quickly jump to one more example. Let's talk a little bit about this particular one. So essentially we see some detections here, right? This looks bad. It came in from an email. There's a document involved with some PowerShell and some CNC activity. But, what would be really useful would be, all right, who else is impacted? We understand it came out from Outlook, which means it came from the email channel. So having the ability to pivot very quickly and understand the email side of the table will allow us to respond faster and contain quicker. But what we can tell very quickly is, messages come in, and if it's a to multiple recipients, you have shared message IDs, and essentially so you can figure out your impact scope very quickly in the email channel. So right now we have 3 mailboxes associated with this particular attack. And when it comes to that XDR correlation, we can see that there's even another victim in this particular attack by allowing us to correlate PowerShell commands. So same PowerShell command, different origin, likely related. We can see some common elements as we go through this particular. So email telemetry is super important. It can help us provide clues and speed response, just like I said. And so we can see other users that are impacted by an email. We can see newly born domains, because that's what they like to deliver, those untested, right? Those new domains that we've never seen when it comes to web reputation, right? We can see email with business email compromise intent tone. So essentially, if they're trying to spoof someone or pretend to be, an executive emailing finance, right? Those types of scams, right? Those urgent payments. And then for the most important use case, lateral phishing. So having valid credentials, getting inside Office 365, phishing internally from a trusted sender, right? Gaining visibility and having protections in place like writing style analysis technology, which can focus on the sender's writing style. But having the ability to see this type of activity is very important. And like I said earlier, correlation. The SOC analyst here is, looking at multiple screens, trying to piece together the puzzle, right? So he can tell the story when an incident does happen. And so this is really where XDR is really going to help organizations pay off and see value. So just as a funnel analogy, very quickly, you're seeing a lot of data sources add raw telemetry into these data lakes, right? So you're looking at PowerShell commands, you're looking at file activity, you're looking at web activity, right? Essentially user activity, all being recorded on the endpoint. And what these systems are going to do is they're going to be able to filter and tag activity of interest. So unusual SSH connections, obfuscated PowerShell, and they're going to use a plethora of different technologies such as machine learning, data stacking, AI, right, and even expert rules. And from these filtered data, they're going to send all of that over to a data lake, right? And they're going to continue to enrich it. So as they correlate events based off that filtering and tagging process, this correlated detections are still going to grab information from the data lake when necessary and also populate it with those new detections. And when those detections do happen, you're going to see alerts, not only in the XDR consoles, but you're also going to see them in the SIEM tool also. And if they have a SOAR or some kind of internal SOAR within their XDR product, you can have automated response built into this. And well, at the same time, they also have the ability to do manual review and response. So threat hunt for emails that come in from the help desk to see what the impact scope is, right? Isolate a machine that may be showing suspicious activity. Those type of response techniques will be available from those XDR systems. And so let me just tie this all back together very quickly. So we'll just revert back to that one example on the endpoint with EPP and EDR. And really, when we extend the story to email and we bring that telemetry in, right, that correlation serves great value because now we understand that there's a broader infection here where we may even have a compromised CFO laptop. We have other email boxes involved with this particular attack, right? Understanding the entire impact scope, not just on the endpoint level, but even in the email channel. So very valuable when you tie that email and endpoint correlation together. And last, so what does this end up looking like? Well, this is an example here, and this is the only time I'm going to show a Trend Micro product today. But essentially, this is a workbench that's what we call them here at Trend Micro. But essentially, this is a visualization of an alert. We can see the MITRE taggings in here of the techniques. We can see a description and impact scope. We can see a score for prioritization. And all of these different objects, depending upon what they are, come with context menus to help you respond. So you can understand beyond just a root cause analysis. You can see the process trees, right? You can even see the email channel and network in a single visual, which allows you to understand the attack very quickly instead of looking at just raw logs. And so quickly, as I finish up here, let's talk about the state of XDR today, where we're at. Essentially, vendors understand their own telemetry best, right? Native XDR, all right, from a single vendor, they understand that. SIEM, see more, but they understand less, requires more normalization, parsing, right? Those processes can take longer, and really the value in that may be less than if you went with a single vendor or native XDR approach. And currently, as organizations, we have to decide, do we want to go broad with the detection sources with a SIEM tool, or do we want to go deep? But today, there's not a lot of both available in the market. So you have to understand what you want from a visibility standpoint in your practice today. And enabling expanded MITRE attack coverage is super important. Deeper insight into your existing coverage so you know what visibility you have and where you need to mature serve value quite significantly in organizations and practices today. And with this activity telemetry, we're talking about lots of storage required. This is going to be SaaS, right? It's going to be super expensive. It's going to be on the XDR providers, but these are going to be massive data lakes depending upon how many security controls you plug into them. So this will be SaaS based as we go forward. And so what is the optimal balance between automated response and manual? Organizations are going to have to come up with that. Do they want fully automated response where there's no hands-on and everything is choreographed through a playbook? Or do they want the process along the way to actually do manual review and allow them to manually action response as they go forward? And so where is XDR headed? Well, EDR vendors will gradually shift to an XDR approach, right? They'll add more data sources, and we're seeing that today. We're seeing that a lot in the market. EDR vendors are starting to partner with organizations or build native applications, but we're seeing that happen today. And as we move forward, XDR is going to become the logical home for any decisions. It's going to have the big data. It's going to allow us to make intelligent decisions as we go forward based on the data we have at our fingertips. So that makes it the most logical home for investigations and decision making as we go forward. And will there be a collision with SIEM? Yes, there certainly will be. We'll start to see SIEM tools broaden the data sources they bring in, and you'll see XDR companies learning from this and increasing their data sources as they go forward. But yeah, this is a collision that I can't wait to see as it plays out. It's going to be very valuable for organizations as those capabilities broaden across both technologies. And with that, I'll hand it back to Brian. I want to thank you for being here today and listening to my session. And I appreciate your time, and we'll talk at the panel when we get there. Thanks, Brian.